All right, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Just another workshop in our series that we've been doing with the OUHSC Nutritional Sciences students. Today we have Caleigh, Will, and Viki joining us. I'm sure they're going to give us the top 5 foods to make us instantly smarter. I'm sure that's exactly what they're going to tell us today. Probably not, but definitely it should be an interesting topic on how that connection between our nutrition, brain health, and really how that goes together and really plays a role in the importance and what we need to look out for. So thank you all, and thank you guys for this great information today.
Perfect, thank you. Well, I'm Caleigh.
I'm Will.
I am Viki.
And today we'll be talking about food for thought, which is we'll be talking a little bit about the connection between nutrition and brain health. Now, before we begin, I have a little pre-quiz here that you guys can do with a QR code. You can put in the chat if there's any difficulties with that, and I can send the link if that's easier. All right, thank you guys for doing that. You guys can keep turning those in if you haven't finished yet, but I'm just gonna start everyone off with a little question and you can answer in the chat. I have a question. Does anyone know what happens when you put cheap gas into a nice car like this here, green Lamborghini? Yep, all you guys are correct. It will damage the engine, which not only decreases the fuel economy, but will decrease the peak performance. Now, why I'm bringing this up is that during this presentation, I want you guys to think about your brain as a Lamborghini. You want to give it good premium fuel to make it run normally and correctly and work at peak performance for a longer period of time. And today we'll talk about high quality nutrients that you can feed your brain to have those things occur throughout the lifespan.
During our presentation today, we'll be covering nutrition, brain foods, the different components that make up those brain foods. There we go. What those components are and how they affect the brain. Those components are omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin E, carotenoids, flavonoids, folate. Also be addressing what the mind diet is, what it is in the breakdown, what a diet of the mind or what that diet looks like, and we'll be concluding after that. Throughout our presentation, we'll be seeking to give you the knowledge to be able to describe how nutrition affects brain functioning processes, identify those brain components within select foods and how the brain functions based off of that, and describe the mind diet and its components. So nutrition and brain function. Our brain is functioning 24/7 and continuously needs fuel such as glucose from the body. Many of you have probably heard the metaphor, you are what you eat. So based on that, it's going to be affecting your brain with premium fuel versus like low quality fuel. High quality nutrients such as vitamins, minerals, foods that are composed of those will help to prevent and avoid detrimental effects on our brain that are caused by intaking the wrong nutrients. Low quality fuel diets and like high refined sugars, which would be foods that are like breads, pastas, cookies, baked goods, can all have detrimental effects on the brain, such as causing slower cognitive function and lead to conditions such as obesity and type 2 diabetes. As research continues, components being deemed as brain foods are being identified and thought to preserve this functionality. So what are brain food components? So omega-3 fatty acids can be found in 3 forms, or 3 main types, which are ALA, which stands for alpha linoleic acid, EPA, which is eicosapentaenoic acid, and DHA, which is doxahenoic acid. And these are found in different foods. ALA is primarily found in plant oils such as flaxseed, canola, and soybean oils. And these are essential fatty acids that you have to get from your food because the body doesn't make these. EPA and DHA are found in foods like fish, mostly of the fattier types, such as salmon, mackerel, herring, as well as other seafood. ALA can be converted into EPA and DHA but only in very small amounts. So it's primarily that you want to get this from your diet. So getting them from certain food sources is important rather than just relying on that conversion. Omega-3s can play a large role in our overall brain health and may have a positive effect moving forward. It has been seen that in utero, our brains are actually affected by the dietary consumption of omega-3 fatty acids by our mothers and can actually contribute to higher IQ when measured. Omega-3 is abundant in cell membranes, and ingestion helps preserve those membranes. And that's why there's a link between brain functionality and the consumption of omega-3 fatty acids. Lower DHA levels in the bloodstream have been associated with a smaller brain size when measured and accelerated brain aging. So how do omega-3 acids affect the brain? So they're critical in brain development, like we said, help preserve the brain health of the membranes due to the preserving nature, help continue efficient communication between the brain cells, found to be important for learning and memory, so cognition, may improve brain functionality in the early stage of stages of cognitive decline. Antioxidants. What are antioxidants, you might ask? So antioxidants can be natural or man-made substances and are found to prevent cell delay. An antioxidant on a scientific level is a molecule that can slow or stop oxidation or electron transfer to other molecules. This is done through hydrogen molecule donation from antioxidant to free radical species, just to get technical. Free radicals are going to be anything that we come in contact from either internal or external sources that can cause that oxidation in the body, which is what's going to cause cell breakdown. So how do antioxidants work? Like I said, it's the donation of an electron to another molecule to prevent that molecule from being destabilized and breaking down. So free radicals in bodies are essentially just unstabilized molecules, but they lead to cell degradation, and they can really cause the development of different comorbidities or diseases within the body. Different sources of these free radicals can be internal through just like different metabolic or bodily processes. You also will come into contact with like external sources, such as if you walk past someone smoking cigarettes, or you breathe in certain chemicals, walk past car fumes. There's really a lot of different external factors that we can absorb free radicals from in our daily lives. So how do antioxidants affect the brain? So high O2 use in the brain increases free radical proliferation or development. They consume or pass through the blood-brain barrier. So that's why the antioxidants have a beneficial effect in reducing that, because of the effect they have on cell membranes. The overall effect is they prevent damage to the neurons caused by the oxidation and oxidative stress that is caused by these free radicals, and slow the cell apoptosis, which is the cell breakdown, and which leads to cellular decline.
So now that Will has talked about what antioxidants are and how they work, I will talk about a few of the brain food components that have antioxidant activity. The first one is vitamin E. This is a fat-soluble vitamin that's found in high amounts in plant-based oils such as sunflower, soybean, and safflower oil, and also in nuts, seeds, and other fruits and vegetables. It's also found in high amounts in things like green leafy vegetables such as spinach and fortified cereals. So like I said, its main role is the antioxidant activity, which just means that it is preventing those free radicals and limiting them, so it can protect against any damage to the cells caused by the oxidative stress that those free radicals occur. So how does this specifically affect the brain? Well, with oxidative stress and free radicals in the brain, they can negatively impact the function of the brain cells. This can lead to chronic inflammation that can lead to other diseases in the body, like cancer, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. So although this is a conversation on just brain function, these antioxidants are helpful throughout our entire body. So what vitamin E can do is minimize that inflammation and limit those free radicals to prolong the normal function of the brain cells. This is also known as slowing the brain aging process. So our brain is going to age throughout our lifespan, but hopefully with consuming more antioxidants in our diet, we can prolong that peak performance of those cells. The next compound with antioxidant activity is carotenoids. This is actually just a pigment that is found in yellow, red, and orange plants, vegetables, and fruits. I have some examples here like carrots, oranges, and watermelon, but you can really think of any fruits and vegetables that have this pigmentation. So sweet potatoes, mangoes, bell peppers, so on pumpkin, all of those things will have carotenoid content. Another one on here to note is spinach, and although it's green, that is just the chlorophyll impairing the reflection of those pigments, but it also has high carotenoid content. So like I said, it's an antioxidant, and there's actually 600 different types of carotenoids. Some that you might have commonly heard of are the ones listed below here, like beta-carotene, lutein, lycopene, and zeaxanthin. And these, an important thing to know with carotenoids is that they must be consumed through foods in the diet. So you need to be able to feel the beneficial effects of the carotenoids, they have to be coming from foods that you eat. Another thing to note is that carotenoids are fat-soluble compounds, and so they're better absorbed with a source of fat. Some journals note that monounsaturated fat has the best absorption rate, which are things like olive oil, canola oil, and grapeseed oil, but I believe that any source of fat is sufficient. Another thing to note is that cooking foods with carotenoids may allow a better effect of them because usually since there's a pigment, it is tightly packed in that raw plant matrix of the tissue. So if you cook it and break it down, more carotenoids will be able to be digested and absorbed to receive the effects of them. So overall, stating those things, to consume these foods, it's best if maybe you are cooking them in some kind of oil, since that is a source of fat, so you can get the best effects of the carotenoids. So how do these affect the brain specifically? Just like vitamin E, they have that antioxidant activity, so they can positively impact cognitive functioning by slowing that cognitive decline. So they're limiting the free radicals and again, slowing that brain aging process to prolong the peak performance of brain cells. An interesting thing I saw in the studies is in older adults here, they increased their intake of two certain carotenoids, lutein and zeaxanthin. And not only did they find that it slowed cognitive decline, but they also saw improvement in function in the brain in places like memory, language, and executive functioning. And so although there needs to be a lot more research done, there might actually be more beneficial effects to consuming these than just the preventative methods of cognitive decline. The next compound and the final compound with antioxidant activity is flavonoids. This is found in natural fruits and vegetables. I have some listed here. There's a longer list, but onions, berries, broccoli, apples, but it's also found in products like wine, tea, and dark chocolate. Now that might have piqued some of your guys' interest more because those sound more delicious, but there is a little caveat to these. Obviously, they have the antioxidant activity, but all of these also have things in them that aren't as great for our body, like wine containing alcohol, tea has caffeine, and dark chocolate has a high fat content. So although it has that antioxidant activity, it may not be the best source compared to those natural fruit and vegetable sources. Now, flavonoids have three major impacts on the brain. The first is that it can protect from things called it can protect neurons, which are your brain cells, from things called neurotoxins. Neurotoxins are natural or man-made compounds that are trying to injure the cell or cause cell death in the brain. Some examples of these are lead and ethanol. And what flavonoids will do is that it will, through many different signaling pathways, will prevent that cell injury to inhibit cell death or cell apoptosis. Another thing it can impact is cognitive functioning. Some research has showed that it could promote memory and learning. They think this because this potential mechanism that flavonoids help in the creation of new blood vessels to increase blood flow to certain parts of the brain, including the hippocampus. If you haven't heard of that before, the hippocampus is a very important part of the brain for memory, so that's probably why it could positively impact your cognitive function. Finally, just like all the antioxidants we stated, it has the potential to limit the loss of function of those neurons by limiting those free radicals and oxidative stress. So overall, all of these antioxidant components are able to slow that cognitive decline process throughout the lifespan. Our final brain food component is not an antioxidant, but it is a very important one, and it is folate. It's also known as vitamin B9, and it's found in many foods in high amounts in dark green leafy vegetables. But as you can see in the list below, it's in a lot of foods that we consume in our everyday life. So fruits, nuts, beans, seafood, eggs, grains, and more. The highest amount are found in things like spinach, liver, asparagus, and Brussels sprouts. And it's shown that most Americans are meeting their recommended folate intake. A population that needs to be more aware of their folate intake and might think about supplementation is women of the reproductive age, because a folate deficiency is linked to birth defects affecting the brain and spinal cord, like spina bifida and anencephaly, which I'll get into how it affects the brain, but that just shows the importance even starting in the development phase of the fetus. So like I said, how folate can impact the brain is that it allows for proper function of the nervous system throughout the lifetime. So even starting in utero, having adequate folate can help develop the parts of the brain, skull, and spinal cord that are needed for survival. It's also important in basic everyday cell function, and it's part of the formation of DNA and RNA. Now, a little brief overview on those. DNA is what makes our genes, that tells our body to make certain proteins and make who we are, and RNA is helpful in the creation of that protein process. And both of these are vital to survival. So that just shows how important this nutrient is in our diet for our brain and the rest of our body. Now, besides the birth defects, a folate deficiency is also linked to a greater risk of neuropsychiatric disorders such as depression and dementia in adulthood. So that's another important reason why we want adequate amounts. Now, I've thrown a lot of scientific information at you of how these brain food components affect the brain, but now Viki will talk about a diet that kind of puts all these components together.
Hello. So a diet that has a lot of these food components that we just talked about is the MIND diet. So the MIND diet, I never changed this. So the MIND diet is a combination between the traditional Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. Both of these are dietary approaches to stop hypertension and consist of foods that can help reduce the risk of different diseases like Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So now we're gonna go into a little overview of what the traditional Mediterranean diet is. So the Mediterranean diet consists of a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, nuts, legumes, whole grains, fish, moderate consumption of meat, eggs, and dairy products, and a modest amount of alcohol. A modest amount of alcohol is defined as 1 drink a day for women and 2 drinks a day for men. But even though this is called the Mediterranean diet, the main thing we want to focus on is to follow a dietary pattern that focuses on increasing whole and minimally processed foods and increasing the consumption of foods that are high in quality nutrients. So now for the DASH diet, DASH stands for Dietary Approach to Stop Hypertension. This diet is lower in sodium than the typical American diet, and it's also low in saturated fat. It also focuses on the consumption of fruits, vegetables, and low-fat dairy products, and includes a wide variety of whole grains, poultry, fish, and nuts. It limits saturated fat, red meat, sodium, and added sugars and sugar-sweetened beverages. So you can kind of see a little pattern here with the DASH in the Mediterranean diet. So when you combine these diets together, they make up the MIND diet. The MIND diet, MIND stands for Mediterranean DASH Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. The creator for this diet format was Martha Claire Morris, who was a nutritional epidemiologist. She basically looked at past research done on specific foods that have a positive and negative effects on brain function and came up with this diet format. So now let's talk a little bit about the MIND diet recommendations. So the food group recommendations in the MIND diet are foods that are rich in fiber and different nutrients that have been proven to boost brain health. These are some of the ones that we previously talked about, like vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, folate, carotenoids, and flavonoids. And to give you a little bit of an overview of the diet structure, it is recommended to consume 3 or more servings of vegetables per day. One of these servings should at least one of these servings should be leafy greens. It is recommended to consume 2 or more servings of berries per week. Here it basically depends on which berries you prefer, but blueberries specifically may have a more potential benefit due to them being high in antioxidants. It is recommended to consume 3 or more servings of whole grains per day. We want to focus on minimally processed grains. Also, for fish and seafood, it is recommended to consume 1 or more servings per week. Fattier fish is recommended, such as like salmon, sardines, what's the other one? Mackerel and herring. For legumes, it is recommended to consume 4 or more servings per week. Poultry is 2 or more servings per week. And for wine, it is recommended 1 glass per day. But if you don't already drink, you can totally skip that recommendation. So as you can see, the cool thing about this diet is that it's more of it can be more long-term sustainable because it's giving you a template, but you can basically fill in those servings with the foods you want. So some of the foods we want to limit are butter, margarines, cheese, red meats, fried foods, sweets, pastries, desserts. The reason we want to limit these is because it's based on the recommendations of lowering saturated fat intake, refined grains, and added sugars. But now with that said, this doesn't mean that you can't ever have these foods, but we want to focus on the previous recommendations we just talked about. So now we're going to go on to a little activity to practice what we just learned. We have a 1-day menu here that has examples of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the goal here is for you guys to be able to recognize which foods belong to the MIND diet and which don't and why. So in the top left corner, we have oatmeal with bananas, berries, and nuts. Do you guys think this is part of the MIND diet? And you can answer in the chat. Okay, and then why do you think this belongs to the MIND diet? Okay. Yeah, you guys are all correct. So yeah, nuts are high in vitamin D. Walnuts usually contain a high amount of folate, and blueberries are high in flavonoids. So now let's go to this middle picture that has the bacon, ham, and eggs. What do you guys think about this one? Okay, that's correct. And why do you guys think that? Yes, so you guys are all correct. It contains cheese, bacon, red meat, and fried eggs. So those are things we want to limit in our diet. Okay, now the top right corner with the strawberries and watermelon. What do you guys think about that one? Okay, and why? Yes, so strawberries contain flavonoids and watermelon contains carotenoids. Okay, now let's go down to the bottom left corner with the steak and eggs. So what do you guys think about that one? Okay, and why? Okay, yeah. So the steak is red meat, so we obviously want to limit that a little bit. The eggs are possibly fried. So now the middle picture with the boiled eggs and spinach. What do y'all think about that one? Okay, yeah, so spinach is a dark leafy vegetable, so it's high in vitamin E, carotenoids, and folate. And then the last one with the crepes and strawberries. What do y'all think about that one? Okay, yeah. So the crepe is similar to a pancake, so it's a refined grain. And the strawberries do contain flavonoids, but overall it's a sweet pastry, so we want to limit that as well. Okay, and then now I'm gonna pass it on to Caleigh and she's gonna do lunch.
All right, so again, we'll start in the top left. We're gonna describe this as spinach and Brussels sprouts bowl with peanuts on top. So why, yes or no, and why, you guys can put it in the chat. Perfect, seeing a few answers coming in. So first with the nuts, those are high in vitamin E, and then the spinach covers a lot of the brain food components with vitamin E, carotenoids, and folate. And then the Brussels sprouts were one of those foods that were on the higher end of amount of folate in them. So good job there. The next one is the burger and fries, yes or no, and why not? Yep, so red meat, again, saturated fat, fried food with the French fries. If we could pull out a brain food component, there are tomatoes that contain carotenoids and lettuce has flavonoids, but overall, something we would want to limit on the MIND diet. Next one are these black bean tacos over here. Yep, so yes, someone said beans and onions, perfect. So beans are a great source of folate. The corn tortilla is also a whole grain source. The onions have those flavonoids, and we didn't talk about avocado today, but it's high in vitamin E and also contains carotenoids, and it's a good source of fat to increase that absorption like I talked about. So that's another important piece of this taco. All right, the next one is a steak bowl with white rice. Yep, perfect. So the steak, red meat, saturated fat, and then the rice is a refined grain. If we wanted to change this to fit it better, we could at least use some brown rice to make it more of a whole grain, but overall something we want to limit. The middle one here, we're going to call it a spinach salad with fish, peaches, and beets. Yes, again, we got that great brain food component spinach, that vitamin E, carotenoids, and folate. The fish is a great omega-3 fatty acid source. And then the peaches we didn't talk about, but it has that orange pigment, which means it actually has that carotenoid content as well. And then finally for lunch, we have chicken tenders and fries, which looks delicious, but yeah, fried for both of them. Yeah, so overall, that's something we would want to limit. Now we'll go over just dinner.
All right, so starting with that meal on the left-hand side, we're going to call it a one-pan meal comprised of carrots, bell peppers, onions, some broccoli, and of course we have a sliced chicken. So go ahead and put in the chat if you think that is going to qualify and why. All right, perfect, getting some answers in there. So the carrots are going to be a component that are rich in carotenoids. Bell peppers additionally contain carotenoids. The onions are going to be rich in flavonoids. Broccoli is one of those dark green vegetables containing both carotenoids and flavonoids. The chicken is a lean poultry source, so it's going to be one of those meat sources that fall in the recommendations. So very, very good. Now onto that middle picture. you guys think that works or not. Great. So you guys are right on cue there. So one, it's a red meat option there, like we want to avoid. Hot dogs are also a processed meat, and so we're going to want to focus more on those whole foods, those pure sources, and lean meats. Now moving up to that top right-hand corner, salmon and asparagus. Looks like with a little bit of lemon. Great. So salmon is going to be high in omega-3s, so it qualifies, and the asparagus is going to be high in folate, so that would be a great choice for a Mind Diet meal. And then finally, with that bottom right-hand corner, nachos, steak component, a little bit of guac. Answer full in. Great. So tortilla chips are fried, unfortunately. Steak is going to qualify as a red meat, so going to want to avoid that. Cheese also doesn't quite fit the ticket there. Guacamole is high in vitamin E and carotenoids, but overall, those other components are going to make it not a recommended meal for the Mind Diet. I will turn back over to Caleigh to sum up.
Perfect. So you guys did great. Seems like we're getting a good understanding. So today we talked about the overview of nutrition and brain function. We went through those brain food components, what they are and how they affect the brain. And then we discussed the Mind Diet, what it was, a breakdown of the diet, and did that little activity with you. Do you guys have any questions for us?
That's excellent information. While we wait to see any questions coming in, just a quick reminder, I'll be sending out a follow-up email to attendees with the slides, this great information, as well as the link to this recording that you can always refer back to. One of the things that, if you guys noticed, I think is great to point out that they hit on things that are recommended for certain, like the Mind Diet. And if you caught it, they never said, oh, this food, like, don't have it at all. There wasn't any like off-limit foods necessarily. It was just recommended to limit it. So of course, everything in moderation, and certainly when you're working towards certain goals with your health and wellness, just being mindful of that maybe some are just a little bit better in helping you reach those goals. But I really appreciated that they never said, oh, just keep, cut this completely out of your diet, because I like a lot of those foods that they said are just not as recommended. So I'm glad I can still have a few of those. I don't know about you guys.
Yes. Okay. Do you want to answer the yogurt? Yeah. We can still say it's good.
So to answer the yogurt question, yogurt is okay in moderation. We basically want to focus on like moderate dairy, but you can still have some yogurt, add fruit on top of it, make it even better. And let me see that. The slides, can we share the slides?
Yes, we are doing that. For the guiding to make a menu, we don't specifically have anything right now, but we can look up any resources that help with Mind Diet recipes, and we can send those out as well. We can give them to Lindsay and be able to share those with you to make it easier, maybe give you guys some ideas based on this template. Any other questions you guys have? With the yogurt too, just differentiating between low fat and high fat yogurt too, just pay attention to those labels, because that low fat would be more beneficial for this diet structure. So that DASH diet, with the question about what dressings or spices to make vegetables more palatable, the DASH diet component of the MIND diet does have lower sodium, but there are a lot of like dry herbs and spices that you can use that don't contain sodium as much, that can make all those vegetables more palatable. I also think roasting vegetables is a great idea to do that, like that one pan meal, and just put it all on there and you can flavor everything. And I think that kind of melds all those flavors together. Any other questions? All right, well, we have a little post quiz. It's the same as the pre-quiz. I'll send a link again in the chat, and we just love if you guys could complete that for us before you leave here today. All right, well, we have about the same as we had on the pre-quiz, so that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you so much for coming and watching our presentation.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.